The wind came down from the mountains that night like a voice from something old. It slid between the pines, low and whispering, bending the branches until they shivered against one another like bones. Eleanor Graves rode slow through the dark, her oil lamp swinging from the horn of her saddle, its weak flame licking gold against the trunks as she passed. The horse's hooves made no sound on the pine needles. Only the creak of leather and the hiss of wind filled the hollow. She kept her eyes forward. The trail curved ahead where the land fell away in a mist, and every step brought her closer to that place, the one she swore she'd never come back to. But here she was, 5 years to the night since the forest took him. The lamp light shook in her hand. The air smelled of rain and pitch. Behind her, the town of Pine Hollow was a scatter of faint lanterns now swallowed by the dark. Ahead, only the whisper of trees. A sound broke through the wind, a low hum, maybe a voice. She froze. The horse shifted beneath her, ears pricking. "Easy," she whispered, rubbing its neck. The sound came again, clearer this time. Not a hum, a word. Her name, Eleanor. The lamp almost slipped from her grip. She turned in the saddle, scanning the woods. Nothing moved but the black shapes of trees, their shadows twisting in the light. Is someone there? No answer, just a slow drag of wind through the needles like breath. She forced the horse forward, deeper along the ridge, until the trail opened to the clearing where the old trailhead cross stood, a crooked timber beam tied with faded ribbon and a rusted horseshoe nailed to its center. Her husband's cross. She dismounted and knelt beside it, brushing away pine needles from the base. Her fingers traced the carved initials worn pale by years of weather. JG. The earth there was soft, darker than the rest, like it still remembered the blood that fed it. She took the flowers from her saddlebag, wild daisies and sage, tied with a strip of linen, and laid them at the foot of the cross. 5 years, John, she said quietly. 5 years, and I still can't forget the sound of your horse coming home alone. The wind lifted her hair. Somewhere in the distance, a branch cracked. She stood slowly, scanning the tree-line. That's when she saw it, light, faint, and white, moving between the trees about 50 yards away. Not lantern light. It was too soft, too alive. Her pulse rose. Who's there? The light drifted left, vanishing behind a thick pine, then flickered again closer. It moved like someone walking, someone in white. Eleanor took one hesitant step forward, hand resting on the pistol at her belt. The horse stamped, snorted, eyes rolling. Easy, girl. The light wavered again, and in its glow she thought she saw the shape of a woman, tall, slender, the hem of her dress brushing the ground. The figure turned its head slightly, enough for Eleanor to see the pale gleam of a face, and then it was gone, swallowed by the dark. Eleanor's breath came sharp. The forest fell silent. Not even a wind dared move. And then, softly, almost close enough to touch, came the whisper again. Eleanor. She stepped back, heart hammering. No, you're not real. The voice sighed, fading into the trees like smoke. A single white petal drifted from above and settled on her boot. She stared at it, unable to breathe. The air grew colder. For a long time, she stood there listening, waiting for the whisper to return. When it didn't, she turned, grabbed the reins, and mounted. But as she guided the horse back toward town, she could feel it, the weight of eyes following from the woods, the hush of unseen things leaning close to hear her heartbeat. At the ridge's edge, she looked back once more. The lamp's glow caught something pale between the trees, a face, or maybe just the moon breaking through the fog. Either way, it was watching. She rode faster. By the time she reached Pine Hollow, dawn was graying the sky. The town was barely awake, smoke curling from chimneys, roosters calling in the distance. The saloon's porch empty except for the night watchman dozing on a barrel. Eleanor tied her horse outside her small cabin at the far edge of town and stood there a moment, looking east where the forest stretched endless and dark. She could still hear the whisper if she listened hard enough. Inside, the cabin smelled of coffee gone cold and old wood. She hung her hat, peeled off her gloves, and stared at the mantel above the hearth. A framed daguerreotype rested there, John's face caught in grainy silver, his eyes calm, kind. Her voice was barely a breath. "I heard you tonight." The window rattled as the wind pressed against it. The pines outside bent and sighed. Somewhere out there, the forest was awake, and it remembered. At the edge of the campfire circle, the old storyteller leaned forward, his voice low and rough as gravel. "Folks say the pines whisper names when the dead ain't done speaking. That night, they called hers, and from that moment on, the town of Pine Hollow would never sleep quiet again." The fire cracked. Someone shifted uneasily in the dark. "Because the pines," he said, "they remember every soul that ever bled beneath them, and they sure remembered Eleanor Graves." The door of the saloon swung open, and every head turned. Dust drifted through the slanting afternoon light as a tall man stepped inside. Gray coat, weather-beaten hat, eyes the color of gunmetal. He walked with a limp, slow and deliberate, his spurs barely whispering on the floorboards. "Whiskey," he said. His voice was rough, like gravel dragged under boots. The bartender poured without question. Pine Hollow didn't get many strangers, and the ones who came didn't stay long. He took the glass, drank once, and stared at the mirror behind the bar. His reflection looked like a ghost from another century. Scar along the jaw, beard gone to silver, a revolver riding low on his hip. The piano in the corner fell silent. From the far table, Sheriff Dane watched him over the rim of his coffee. "Ain't seen you around before," he said finally. The stranger didn't turn. "Ain't been round in a while. Name?" He set the empty glass down with a soft click. "Hale. Jonas Hale." The name rolled through the saloon like a chill draft. Someone muttered, "Gun hand," before catching himself. Jonas's eyes flicked to the mirror again, scanning the room, catching the faces watching him. "Just passing through," he said. "Looking for work." The sheriff leaned back, chair creaking. "Ain't much work for drifters with iron on their hips." Jonas's hand brushed the gun absently. "Then maybe I'll make my own." The tension cracked for a breathless second before the piano stumbled back to life. Talk resumed, low and careful. The bartender slid another whiskey down the bar, but Jonas didn't touch it. His eyes had already moved to the woman sitting near the window, Eleanor Graves. Her hands were still, wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold. Her face was unreadable, pale in the slanted light. Jonas watched her like a man trying to remember a dream. Outside, wind lifted dust across the main street. The smell of pine drifted faintly on the air, sharp, clean, but wrong somehow, like the forest was breathing too close. The sheriff pushed back his chair. "We don't need trouble, Hale." Jonas nodded. "Ain't looking for any." He stepped away from the bar, hat shadowing his eyes, and walked out into the glare of sunlight. By dusk, the sky had turned copper. The wind came down the ridge cold and mean, carrying the first hint of rain. Jonas sat his horse on the high trail above Pine Hollow, watching the valley fall into shadow. From here, the town looked like a cluster of lanterns clinging to the edge of a black sea, the whispering pines stretching endless behind it. He lit a smoke, the match flaring against the dark. That's when he saw her again. Eleanor was riding toward the forest, a small figure against the dying light. No saddlebag, no lantern, just a lone woman on a gray mare heading straight into the trees. Jonas frowned, dropped the match, and turned his horse downhill. The pines swallowed her fast. He followed at a distance, hooves muffled by the thick carpet of needles. The air grew colder, heavier. The forest felt alive, breathing around him. He lost sight of her near the old creek bed, but caught the faint glimmer of movement ahead. Silver flickers through the mist. The ruins of a small chapel rose before him, stone half buried in moss, its steeple long fallen. Eleanor's horse stood tied to a branch nearby, reins swaying. He dismounted quietly. The air buzzed faintly, like a far-off hum. Eleanor knelt near the altar, head bowed, whispering words he couldn't hear. The lamp beside her guttered, flame weak and trembling. Then it went out. Jonas froze. The clearing went dark. A soft glow bloomed behind the chapel, white, fluid, shifting through the trees like fog made of light. It moved closer, and the air grew cold enough to sting his lungs. "Eleanor," he called low. She didn't answer. She was staring past him now, eyes wide, lips parted in something like awe or terror. Jonas turned. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, half shadow, half moonlight. A woman in white. The fabric of her dress drifted as though caught in water, her hair pale as frost. She took a step forward, bare feet soundless on the earth. Jonas's hand went to his revolver. "Stay back." The figure tilted her head, the movement almost human. Then her voice came, soft, echoing through the pines. "Jonas." He froze. The sound wasn't just his name, it was memory, cutting deep. A voice he'd buried with the past. "Jonas." He raised the gun, though his arm shook. "You're dead," he said. "You're not." The figure flickered. For a heartbeat. Her face was clear, young, beautiful, eyes filled with the kind of sorrow that could split a soul. Then she was gone, dissolving into a scatter of white petals carried on the wind. Eleanor gasped, stumbled back. Jonas lowered the gun slowly, breath ragged. The forest went silent, except for the far-off creak of trees. "What did you see?" she whispered. He holstered the gun, turned to her, face pale. "Nothing I care to see again." "That voice," she said. "It called your name." He didn't answer. A branch cracked somewhere behind them, deep in the dark. Jonas's eyes flicked that way, sharp and wary. "We should leave." They mounted fast, riding hard out of the trees, the cold wind chasing them. When they reached the ridge, the town lights were faint below, but the forest behind them still whispered, low, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Eleanor finally spoke. "You know her?" Jonas kept his eyes ahead. "No. I knew someone once who sounded like her." The wind shifted. The scent of pine rolled through, sweet and sharp, and somewhere far back in the dark came a laugh, soft, broken, and gone in an instant. Eleanor shivered. "The pines remember," she said quietly. Jonas didn't reply. He just stared down at the valley, jaw tight, the shadow of old guilt flickering across his eyes as thunder rumbled over the distant hills. Behind them, the forest sighed, like a breath drawn in and held. And in that moment, for the first time in years, Jonas Hale felt the weight of the past pressing against the present, whispering through the trees that some things buried don't stay dead. Rain hammered the tin roof of the barn like 1,000 fists. Jonas Hale sat in the corner, lantern burning low, hands trembling around a half-clean Colt. The storm outside clawed at the walls, wind shrieking through cracks as if the forest itself wanted in. Across from him, Eleanor stood near the open doorway, rain whipping against her coat. Her eyes were dark hollows, fixed on the tree line beyond the corral where the pines rose black against the lightning. "You knew her," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. "That ghost," she called your name. Jonas didn't look up. The revolver's cylinder clicked softly as he turned it. "I knew her," he said. "Once." The words landed heavy between them, swallowed by thunder. Eleanor stepped closer. "Who was she?" He finally met her gaze. "Your sister." The sound of rain seemed to stop for a heartbeat. Eleanor's breath caught. "Lydia." He nodded once, jaw tight. "She was alive the last time I saw her." Lightning flashed, bleaching the barn in white. The shadows jumped. Eleanor's face was pale, her eyes full of disbelief. "You lie." Jonas set the gun down. "I wish to God I was." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice low and raw. "Years ago, I rode with a man named Cutter. Called ourselves the Ridge Boys. We ran cattle, gold, whatever paid. One winter, Cutter took us north, said there was easy money on the Pine Hollow Trail. Settlers carry in silver and supplies. He didn't tell us there was a wedding party in that wagon." Jonas's voice broke against the storm. "Your husband, your sister, the preacher. We came down on them like wolves. I didn't pull the trigger, but I didn't stop the men who did." Eleanor stood frozen, lips parting soundlessly. When it was done, Jonas went on. She was still breathing. "Lydia, I tried to get her out, but the fire caught fast. Cutter shot me in the leg for interfering. Left me for dead. She ran into the woods in that white dress. I never found her. Nobody did." Eleanor's face twisted, grief, fury, disbelief colliding at once. "You expect me to forgive that?" Jonas shook his head. No, ma'am. I came to face it. Outside, the thunder rolled low, like something crawling through the earth. Eleanor turned away, clutching her arms tight. All these years, I thought the forest took them. But it was men like me, Jonas said quietly. Lightning flared again, followed by a deep, bone-shaking crack, with splitting somewhere beyond the barn. The horses screamed in their stalls. Eleanor ran to the door, peering into the rain. Jonas. He was already on his feet, gun in hand. Get back. Through the sheets of rain, they saw movement near the edge of the woods. 3 figures, faint and dark, walking slow across the open field. No lanterns, no sound but the wind. Jonas raised the gun. That can't be. The figures kept coming, stepping through mud without a sound. As the lightning flashed, their faces appeared for a blink, pale, wet, eyes hollow as graves. Jonas staggered back. Cutter. The lead figure grinned, lips black with rot. The others spread behind him, shadows wearing the faces of dead men. Eleanor whispered, "What are they?" "Ghosts," Jonas said. "Or something worse." The barn door rattled hard. The lantern flickered. Rain hissed through the cracks. Then the voices came, low, thick, layered with echoes. Jonas Hale, blood remembers. Eleanor backed up until she hit the wall. Jonas cocked the hammer. "Stay behind me." The door burst inward. The storm came with it. Wind, rain, and cold so sharp it burned. The shapes moved through the opening, dragging shadows with them. Jonas fired. The report split the air like a thunderclap. The figure jerked back, then kept walking. No wound, no blood, just the smell of smoke and earth. "Jonas!" Eleanor's voice cracked. He grabbed her arm. "To the horses. Now!" They bolted into the rain, boots sinking into mud. The wind howled like something alive, driving needles of rain into their faces. Eleanor looked back once and saw them. 5, maybe 6 of them now, emerging from the treeline, white eyes glowing faint under the lightning. "Faster!" Jonas shouted, limping hard as they reached the fence. They swung into the saddles just as a hand, cold and slick as clay, reached for Jonas's leg. He kicked free, fired again, and the figure fell, dissolving in a mist that hissed and vanished. They rode toward the ridge, hooves pounding through the storm. The forest flashed white and black in the lightning, the trees bending under the wind. The whispers followed, every gust carrying voices, memories, screams. At the ridge, the rain broke for a heartbeat, and through the mist Eleanor saw it. An old chapel ruin lit by a soft, unnatural glow. Jonas slowed his horse, breathing hard. "She's calling me." "Jonas, don't." He slid from the saddle, limping toward the light. Eleanor followed, shouting his name, but her voice was swallowed by the wind. Inside the chapel, the glow thickened until it filled the air like fog. And there, at the altar, stood Lydia, her white dress torn and stained, her eyes bright as stars. "Lydia!" Eleanor breathed. Her sister's head turned slowly, lips parting in a sad, broken smile. "Blood remembers." Jonas fell to his knees. "I'm sorry." The air trembled. The walls of the ruin seemed to pulse, shadows shifting like old ghosts crowding closer. Behind Lydia, other faces formed, men from the past, eyes hollow, mouths whispering her words. "Blood remembers." The sound built into a howl that shook the ground. Jonas looked up through the storm of light and shadow. "Then let it end with me." He drew his gun, chamber empty but his hand steady, and stepped into the light. Eleanor screamed his name. The forest roared, and then everything went white. When the light faded, only rain remained. The chapel was silent, empty but for Eleanor kneeling in the mud, her sister's veil resting in her hands. She lifted her eyes to the sky, whispering through the tears, "The blood's been paid." The wind sighed through the pines, soft and low, like a voice finally at rest. The bell tolled once, a hollow, broken sound that rolled through the valley like thunder from a dead sky. Eleanor Hale stood in the rain, veil clutched tight in one hand, revolver in the other. The storm had passed, but the air still smelled of iron and smoke. The chapel behind her was nothing but ash and bone. Every breath she drew felt heavy, like the earth itself was holding it back. From the trees came footsteps, slow, dragging, uneven. She raised the gun. Jonas stepped into view, coat torn, face cut, eyes empty. The glow that had swallowed him inside the chapel still flickered faint behind his gaze, pale as dawnlight. "Jonas!" Eleanor's voice cracked on the word. He stopped, hat in his hand, blood on his sleeve. The silence stretched until it felt like it would snap. "She let me go," he said. Eleanor's grip tightened. "Lydia," he nodded once, said the debt wasn't mine to pay. His gaze lifted toward the ridge where the pines swayed slow in the morning wind. "But she's not gone. Not yet." The wind shifted. The forest whispered again. The same words. "Blood remembers." Eleanor turned toward the trees, her jaw set. "Then we finish it." Jonas looked at her, mud-streaked, eyes wild, coat whipping in the wind. And for a moment she looked just like Lydia on her wedding day, defiant against the storm. He holstered his gun. "You sure? She deserves peace," Eleanor said. "And they deserve hell." They rode before dawn, through mist thick as smoke. The world was quiet but for the creak of saddle leather and the wind sighing through the needles. When they reached the ridge, the ground broke open. Old tracks, shallow graves, half-buried bones. The place where Cutter and his men had once burned the wagons. The stench of the past clung to the soil. Jonas dismounted first, limping toward a half-rotted cross that leaned in the mud. This is where it started. Eleanor knelt beside it, brushing moss from the wood. Beneath, a name faintly carved, Lydia Hale. The sound of hooves broke the stillness. Jonas spun, hand on his gun. From the fog came 3 riders, men in long coats, rifles across their saddles. Cutter's mark burned into their hats. The last of the Ridge boys. "Well, I'll be," the lead rider drawled, voice rough as gravel. "Jonas Hale. Thought the pines took you." Jonas stepped forward, coat open, revolver low. "They tried." The rider spat into the dirt. "You got some nerve coming back here." Eleanor rose beside him, veil fluttering in the wind. "He ain't back alone." The men stared, confused, uneasy. One crossed himself. "Who the hell is she?" Jonas's voice was quiet even. "Justice." The rider barked a laugh. "Justice don't come from ghosts." The forest disagreed. The pines shuddered all at once, a deep sound like the world exhaling. From their shadows poured a pale light, slow and steady, spreading across the clearing like dawn turned to frost. The men's laughter died. Lydia stepped out of the fog, her wedding dress trailing through the mud, veil torn and glistening. Her eyes caught the light like stars behind storm clouds. One of the men dropped his rifle. "Sweet Lord." The others drew steel, shouting, firing into the mist. The bullets vanished into light. Jonas didn't move. He only watched as Lydia drifted forward, her voice soft and cold. "You took my life." The wind carried her words, bending the grass flat. The men screamed. Their horses reared, eyes rolling white, bolting into the trees. The riders tumbled, thrashing, their shouts swallowed by the storm that rose again from the ridge. Jonas stepped forward, hand trembling. "Lydia, it's done. Let him go." Her eyes found his. "You asked mercy of the grave, Jonas Hale." He nodded. "And I'll take what comes." Eleanor moved between them, voice sharp and steady. "Lydia, listen to me. You said the blood was paid. You said you'd rest." Lydia's gaze softened, the fury flickering behind the sorrow. "Rest comes when truth is clean." Then she turned to the riders. The ground split beneath their boots, black roots coiling up like serpents, dragging them down into the earth. Their screams faded fast, buried under wind and rain and soil. Silence fell again. Lydia stood in the clearing, veil drifting weightless around her. The first sunlight of morning broke through the clouds, washing gold over her pale face. Eleanor stepped closer, voice trembling. "You can rest now, sister." Lydia smiled faintly, tears like glass at the corner of her eyes. "You look just like Ma." The wind stirred her hair. Her form began to fade, light unraveling in threads of silver. "Tell her, I kept my vows." And then she was gone. Only the veil remained, tangled in the grass, glowing faint for a heartbeat before turning to dust. Jonas sank to his knees. Eleanor watched the light fade from his eyes, peace for the first time in years. "It's over," she said softly. He nodded. "No, ma'am. It's remembered." The forest stood still, the pines whispering low, no longer angry, no longer mourning, just remembering. Eleanor holstered her gun, turned her horse toward the valley. Jonas rose, slow and tired, following behind. As they rode down the ridge, the morning broke clean and bright. The storm had passed, and the scent of pine was sharp and sweet on the air. Behind them, the graveyard on the ridge lay quiet, save for one small sound, a single bell ringing once in the wind.